Hello fellow survivors and welcome to The Long Dark 2 BLACKFROST. That's right, can you believe it? There's a new Long Dark game coming and it's called BLACKFROST or The Long Dark 2. It's scheduled for release in 2026, so about 2 years from now, and it looks amazing. So we're going to talk about that today based on the information we have. A trailer was dropped out of the blue from the hinterland and we have this short trailer to go on, as well as a post made by game director Raph in the Hinterland's own website. There's also some additional information on the Steam website as well about the game. We're going to break down an overview of what this game is today. We're not going to break down every little detail you might see in pictures, that sort of stuff, but we'll point out a few things here and there and give you the gist of what this game is and what you can expect from it. So, Long Dark 2, amazing stuff. What is this? Well, it is a survival game just like the Long Dark 1, and it's meant to be complementary to the Long Dark 1. It's not meant to be a direct competitor. It is connected to the same universe and same lore and same world, but you can play both. They're meant to be two different perspectives to the same sort of world you're set in. And what's interesting here is the setting of this game. It is set in a place called Harmon in Canada, and it's 1 year after the Great Flare. So in Long Dark 1, when the Aurora hits for the first time and Will and Acid crash the plane in story mode, that's basically day zero. That's the Great Flare or the first flare. And the story of the Long Dark 2 is set 1 year after that. This is when people have sort of, once they have survived, they started coming out of their shells, communities have started to be formed, and there's more of an NPC interaction with this game. Now that also means that this game, unlike the Long Dark 1, is actually multiplayer. It is co-op, and I know a lot of people are excited about that. So the lone survival philosophy of the Long Dark 1 isn't present, it seems, in the Long Dark 2. In the Long Dark 1, in story mode you meet people, but in survival mode you don't. You don't meet any people at all, except for the trader if you have the DLC, who you only talked on the radio. But other than that, you're completely alone in this massive world. However, in the Long Dark 2, there are communities out there, and you interact with these communities, it seems. It also seems like in the trailer that humans might also be enemies. That's also possible. And it seems from the description that the game is a bit focused on how you will utilize other people for survival. So how do you get on with other people and what role do they play in your survival? And this includes playing co-op. If you play co-op, then your partner is also relevant to your survival. So it's more people oriented than the first game, which is very interesting. It is also listed as a survival role-playing game, which is interesting because Long Dark 1 is not a role-playing game at all. So this is a bit unusual. It's not really talked much about in the descriptions. It just says that you build your own survivor, you customize traits and skills, you collect scars and stories, and experience life as a survivor in this beautiful yet dangerous world. Other than that, we don't really have any information on what this entails, but I assume there'll be some sort of experience system of some sort. I mean, we have that in Long Dark 1, but it's more skill-based. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of customization we're talking about here in the Long Dark 2. We don't really know, but it does seem to be a story set a year after the first game. You're playing your own survivor, it seems, and now you have other people to interact with, including friends that you can play on co-op. So that's awesome. Now let's talk about the visuals of it. The visuals of the game look amazing. And this is made in Unreal and not Unity, even though it almost looks like Unity because they have amazingly kept that watercolor look that the Long Dark 1 has, except that it's upgraded. And I think that looks fantastic. I really love the style of the Long Dark 1. Some people don't, but I think most people who play the Long Dark all the time really like the style, the visuals of the Long Dark 1. And it seems like they kept that aesthetic in the Long Dark 2, and it looks absolutely amazing. It doesn't directly say in the trailer that it's made on Unreal, but we know it is because they have announced this in the past. In fact, the only teaser we had of this game existing prior to this launch was a teaser video, a very short one that Raph posted ages ago, teasing a new game they were working on. And actually, if you look closely at this video and the trailer, we actually know this is the same game, because in the trailer there's a scene where a character goes through a window and enters a room that seems to be covered in snow and is a bit dilapidated. And in the teaser that Raph posted ages ago, you can see this is clearly the same room, except now it's decorated like a safe house, you might say. This is clearly the same game, and this has made it Unreal. So the graphics are much more detailed, they're much higher than in Unity. But of course, it does mean that even though this game is The Long Dark, they probably had to make a bunch of stuff from scratch, because it's just it's a whole new engine. And you can see a lot of traditional Long Dark stuff in the game. You know, one character has the flare gun, there's Pinnacle Peaches, you know, recognize this drawer in this scene here, this looks like a familiar drawer. And of course there's wolves and there's moose and hatchets and all sorts of things. So this is clearly The Long Dark, just upgraded, and that's amazing. It looks fantastic, I think. Now, in terms of the game mechanics, we don't really know much about it, so I can only really speculate. There are some details on the Steam page, in addition to what's already been outlined with survival RPGs. For example, there's a new mechanic called BLACKFROST, hence the name. The gist of it, as I understand it, is that basically there is a radiation fallout from the nuclear power plant in Harmon. You can actually see this in the distance in one of the scenery screenshots that they have. And I presume there is some sort of interaction between the radiation and the aurora, causing some sort of frost mechanic. Maybe something akin to like acid snow or some such. For some reason it reminds me of the black ice thing in Miranda.
It's cold outside.
Freezing, isn't it?
I hope not, because if that snow turns to slush, we'll get black ice. Absolute death trap.
There's an offhand reference for you. But yeah, so that's probably be some sort of survival mechanic that comes in addition to Aurora. Maybe it's something similar to like how Timefall works in Death Stranding. It's a weather effect that will happen now and then, and you have to take precautions too. So that's interesting. We'll have to see what that's about. Then they also have something called Permalife. It's not very well explained what this is. Basically, it's the opposite of permadeath, where it basically says that every death is a new adventure, where you accumulate risks and fears as you move through the world and succumb to various hazards. You can face your fear, overcome the downside, and strengthen your survivor's story in the world. But of course, this is all very vague. We don't really know what this means exactly. It might be that whenever you die, you get some sort of debuff, but you can overcome this or accommodate this so that it doesn't negatively impact your game in the long run, and it becomes kind of like a challenge. We don't really know exactly what this means, but it does sound interesting. We're not really sure. We have to see. I'm hoping it's not similar to the trauma system in Winter Survival. So that's a game I tried not that long ago, and I had this trauma system where basically the longer you survived and the more experience you had, the more trauma you got, which was an interesting concept in the sense that you basically got these downsides, like because of isolation and trauma, you started hallucinating and that sort of thing. And there were some basically debuffs to the game. But the problem with that game was you couldn't accommodate it in any way. Once the debuffs were in place, they were always in place, and except for some things that would alleviate it. So you couldn't really overcome the trauma in a real sense. But here it sounds like maybe you do. So I don't really know. We only have really these a couple of sentences to go by, so there's not much to say. We just have to see. It does also say that classic permadeath is still an option. Presumably there'll be a story mode and a survival mode, and there'll be some differences between them as well. So it's a bit hard to say exactly what that entails. There's also a new mechanic called the Will to Live, which is basically a psychological survival element. They call it resilience, and there's statistics and mechanics underneath that to do with doubts, fears, and that sort of stuff. It basically sounds to me like an insanity meter. And some games have that, most notably Green Hell have that, where you become insane, you start hallucinating and making wrong decisions and that sort of stuff. It sounds like The Long Dark's doing something similar. The insanity system has always been a natural or logical aspect of survival games, in my opinion, but it's never really well implemented. It's something that makes sense, that is in a survival game, but it's not usually an interesting mechanic. So very interesting to see what Hintland does with this. What's going to happen? Is it going to be some sort of like insanity, cabinary fear thing? Is it going to be fear and paranoia? Does it impact how you interact with people? Does it impact your skills out in the open? And we don't really know. We have to see what this is. but it's an interesting addition that I think a lot of people wouldn't mind seeing in the game, to be honest. I think people in general probably won't mind this. It might be something that you can optionally turn off as well. We just have to see. And now in terms of the actual release, it is scheduled for release in 2026. And it's going to be in early access first, most likely early 2026. So say a year and a half from now probably. And they're deliberately doing an early access run, similar to they did with the Long Dark one. And that's because that worked out really well. The Long Dark was released on early access, and that was in 2014, I think. And in 2017, it was released as version 1. So they had a 3-year run as early access, and they got a lot of information from that. They could see how the community reacted. They could expand upon feedback. They could do, basically, it was a joint development between the developers and the community, and they felt that worked out really well. And Raph has spoken quite highly of this process as well. If you want, there is a relatively recent podcast with him where he talks about this development and the early access philosophy and how that worked out. I'll leave a link to that in the description. So it's quite interesting to listen to what he has to say about it. And it seems like they're basically repeating that. So you can expect to have this game in early access, and they make it very clear that when it does become in early access, we have to make sure we understand that it won't be a complete game at the time. It won't be a finished game when you can first play it. It's going to go through an early access phase where we all get to try it out, or hopefully all of us get to try it out, give feedback, and then they'll change it, develop it until eventually it's released in its full form. And that's basically what's going to happen. So yeah, that, my fellow survivors, is the Long Dark 2. This is absolutely crazy. It's really exciting to see there's going to be a whole new Long Dark game. This is something that's been talked about for some time, and we have hoped this would happen, but there has never been any concrete news about it until now. Now, there is, of course, this feeling that, well, what happens to the Long Dark 1 then? Well, they're still developing the Long Dark 1. There's still stuff to be released with the Long Dark 1. There's things like more stuff to do with the trailer. There's visual enhancements and, of course, episode 5 as well. And they have said it's going to coexist for a while, so I don't think it's necessarily that once Long Dark 2 comes out, you automatically just switch to that forever. I think it's going to be two kind of different games set in the same universe. So you can play both is the idea, and that sounds good to me. Of course, we have to see how it plays out. We don't really know until we try the game itself, do we? And all that being said, the game itself, I think it looks amazing. There's a lot more to say about it. There's a lot of artwork to go through. They released like a media package, and there's stills from the trailer, and of course also from Steam. So there's a lot to go through here. I haven't gone into all the details in this video, but I might do a separate video where I do a detailed breakdown, where I just kind of go through everything one at a time and just see what we can do. Because this is the first news about the Long Dark 2. This is the first thing we know about BLACKFROST. So there isn't really much to go on other than a few things from the past, little snippets. So everything is basically new. Everything can be analyzed and broken down. There's quite a lot of concept art and beautiful scenery, and there's some gameplay stuff as well. So it looks fantastic. Most likely we won't see anything from this game again for a while. Now they have announced that this is happening, and that's really cool. Like, it's a fantastic looking game, but they probably do want to focus on wrapping up episode 5 of Winter Mutant Long Dark 1 first. Once that is done, they can focus on this new game. And I must say I'm really excited about it. I didn't really see this coming. It's one of those things that it's kind of like a secret whisper. People, Long Dark 2, maybe in the Long Dark 2 they'll have a co-op. Well, maybe, yeah, maybe. Nah, there's not going to be a Long Dark 2, you know. But it does seem like that is actually going to happen. There's going to be a Long Dark 2, and there's going to be co-op in it, so that's going to be amazing. So yeah, maybe I have to rope my wife into playing the Long Dark now, or maybe I can team up with Rand and Thomasina, and we can take the world by storm. Or maybe we should have the Hobbits, Hobbit team. Oh, this is got endless possibilities. So yeah, the Long Dark 2 has been announced. It looks absolutely fantastic. It looks really cool. I'm really excited to learn more about it. It's interesting that they upgraded the engine, which makes perfect sense. All this being said also, by the way, there are other games in development with Hinterland. We know there are at least 3 games they're making. One of them is a smaller game. I don't think this is the small game. We knew that there was at least one Unreal game because they had mentioned that in the past. And I didn't expect it to be the Long Dark, but it makes sense that it move on to a better engine than Unity because there's a lot of issues with Unity as well. But yeah, it just looks really, really great. I do like they kept the visuals of the Long Dark, like the style of it, but have upgraded it. And it'd be interesting to see what other games they have in store, not just this. I do like that the spirit and philosophy and style of the Long Dark continues. So after 10 years, the Long Dark 1 is nearing its end in terms of its development and additions, even though it still will continue to be added on. And the Long Dark 2 doesn't supplant it, at least not immediately. And it basically continues. So we might have a lot of Long Dark for a long time. A long, long dark. And that's amazing. Yeah, I can't wait. Let me know what you think in the comments about this and whether you're excited or not and what you like best and what do you think was going to happen. And of course, let's hope we can all try it out in early access. That sounds great. And all that being said, I hope you enjoyed this little overview of what the Long Dark 2 is, what it looks like, and I'll probably make another video with some more details later. Okay, survivors, thank you for watching, and I'll see you another time. Bye-bye.